Hi, and welcome to Amazed, the short version, a teaching channel, where I will be your host, Isan Jones. This is episode 10, titled The Coldest Spirit, and it is on the list. Now, the coldest spirit can be good, bad, or indifferent. Ice cold, in fact, as to its feelings. Now, I can write about my feel-good stories about how there have been those spirits that can help you. Those that came back to help me in my vulnerable circumstances. But what about the ones that give us warnings that they could take us back? I experienced that too. One time it was with a nurse. Now this nurse, she never held my hand as in consoling me before giving me a shot. And she was rather rough in her handling of me. At times, it had gotten so difficult that it became too much to bear. It was just her and I alone in that room, and she took advantage of it. Now, later on, I had warned those at the hospital on staff, pretty much exclaiming, "Red alert, red alert, you've got a rogue nurse," although I didn't say it in those words. But this nurse wasn't simple. It's because she knew she could get away with it. If I had taken those pills she was offering, I wasn't sure if I could wake up. And so we argued back and forth. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but that's not the dosage that the doctor has prescribed." I may have been a little groggy when I said it. "Well, you're getting them anyway." She held a little paper cup in her hand, taunting me, saying it in her sinister voice. Now, yes, this story does contain all the details, but I won't speak about all of them here, just a little bit about the nurse. I did write them in my first book titled When Crows Call, back in 2011, I believe, or 2010. It was my first title in the series. But this lady, or nurse, that stood by my bedside, she had yelled at me. I pretended not to be awake. Have you ever experienced that? Where you've shut your eyes closed so tightly, kind of curled up in a ball, pretending as if not to notice someone so they couldn't disturb you? Well, I pretended to not be awake. And so she walked out. She walked out mercilessly, as if nothing had happened. So sometimes, I'm relating that story because sometimes I want to say that the coldest spirit could be in our midst, and others wouldn't suspect it, but we can tell. Now, when I first started this podcast, I said you would have to take the good with the bad. So this isn't one of those feel-good stories. But if there's any consolation to you, without telling you all the details that's already written in my books, I'd like to let you know that I survived. Now, some would ask, how could you attribute those having evil spirits to God? And my question would be, how could you not? We have control over ourselves only. But God has control over the dominion. And I don't get into who's right or wrong about a subject, but I do know for a fact that evil could be in our midst. However you want to describe it, those people get away with it trustingly. And it could be an ugly spirit that's gone rogue. On another point, I guess we all could have them. And learning that we will have to fight our demons too is not something so extraordinary. Even the average person would have to deal with that. And the main thought about that is that we just wouldn't want to let the evil that could possibly come within us, anybody, we wouldn't want to let it take over. Now that lady, the nurse, she seemed like a regular lady. But according to her action, she wasn't. And fortunately, I'm here to tell you, as a witness to this unnatural and strange phenomena, that there could, in fact, be evil people that are lurking. How and why? I could never begin to answer those questions. If everything were kumbaya, as far as spirits, we would never have to worry. But unfortunately, just like those squigglies I mentioned, they could be up to something evil as far as dastardly deeds. Okay. Now, I promise I won't focus on the bad. This podcast is about those good experiences I've had that override any bad ones. But I did have to relate that story. But in the future, this podcast will focus only on the good. And I just had to tell you that, truthfully speaking, that if you ever were to encounter someone, anyone, as a bad spirit, when it's in the embodiment of a person, just pray. Because evil does have its limits. And God could be watching to help preserve you to survive. Thanks for listening. Tune in next week. Next week's episode will be OMG. That is the title of episode 11. Stay tuned.